Hello, how are you all doing? Got the reading glasses on today. I'm going to be... It's giving up smoking. It's a story time, and I've decided to do it in two parts. Part 1 and part 2. And I'm going to be reading everything, not just glancing at it. I'm just going to sit here and read from this that I've written. It's my own words, of course. And I've chosen to do that because, to be honest, it will be far more factual and very honest if I sit and read from what I've written rather than glancing at something. So without further ado, I'm going to get straight into it. As I say, this is part 1. There is a part 2 if you're interested in watching that. So thank you for watching. Okay, let's get straight into giving up smoking, my story. Okay, right. Well, I started trying out smoking when I was about 9 years old. Yes, I know, I was 9 years old. Back in the early days of my smoking journey, it was only a tiny bit of smoking, such as the end of my granddad's roll-up bats, or the cigarettes half smoked in the working men's clubs, and, you know, the social clubs that I went to. You might hear my little dog walking about. He's not smoking. Oh, and by the way, you know, I don't smoke anymore. Okay, so I then moved on to having a whole roll-up to eventually smoking cigarettes. Now, I'd like to point out that years ago, it was quite easy to buy tobacco. I'm in my very late 50s, and, you know, even adults back then, you know, they would give you tobacco. Sweet shops, tobacconists, basically anywhere that sold any form of tobacco would just sell it to you. You know, there was no restrictions, there were no age checks. The dangers of tobacco wasn't even taken that seriously, and the dangers of cancer and other associated diseases were taken even less notice of. Perhaps it was the time and year that I lived in. It's as though we walked around a bit blinkered. It didn't come into your head. So, okay, now, for me, smoking was relaxing, and even as a young child, I found it relaxing. No need to go ins and outs of, you know, my life story, but I found it relaxing. And I personally found the nicotine aspect of smoking the most desirable aspect of smoking. That's sorry if you can hear children screaming. I can't do a lot about that. Very important subject, and I've got kids screaming. For me, as I say, you know, the nicotine was the most desirable aspect. It's the most dangerous, addictive part, isn't it? I'd find that for every inhalation of tobacco I swallowed, it made my head and body feel just great. It makes me sound like a drug addict, but, you know, maybe that's the thing. Smoking is a drug, but, you know, it's all dressed up as a nicer drug than its counterparts of cocaine, heroin, etc. But in my opinion, still a drug. You know, I mean, if you ask any smoker who's tried to give up or has given up, but then starts again, the initial hit you get from that first inhalation is amazing. Your whole brain just feels like it's floating so much, so you even feel dizzy and sick. But, well, here's the thing, you just have to take another hit. Sorry, spitting at you, everyone. And then another, but before you know it, you're back with your best friend, and the only thing that makes you feel better is your old mate nicotine. Is what it is, isn't it? You know, as I say, this is going to be, you know, quite an honest story. Anyway, although I started smoking at an early age, I did give up for the first time in my mid-20s. Why did I give up? Certainly not because I wanted to. No, I didn't. I had no choice. I had to give up due to health reasons. I'd had several pneumothorax. This is where the air leaks into the space between your lung and chest wall. The air pushes onto the outside of the lung and the lung collapses. The pneumothorax led to me having collapsed lungs. I was also asthmatic. It's a wonder I could even breathe sometimes, but still I continued to smoke. So there I was in the hospital, and even before my surgery, I got my husband to wheel me out in a wheelchair for one last fag. My asthma wasn't doing great or even well. I was in pain, I was awaiting surgery, and I was an addict and a slave to nicotine. All I could think about was smoking. I came back to the ward and I was told they needed to inflate my lung there and then as best as they could until my surgery in the morning. And it needed to be done immediately. I thought, ooh. To this day, I have never forgotten the pain I experienced. It was absolutely excruciating. I was later told that they could hear me screaming down at the other end of the ward. I'd like to add that this was years ago and no pain relief was given, just a needle the size of a knitting needle, inserted with a medical tap, like a little tap here, straight into my chest wall. Oh, I've got to tell you, it's not one of my favourite memories. Anyway, if that wasn't bad enough, and also the pain I had before the surgery to fix my lung, well, waking up with a chest drain and lots of other sorts of metal equipment hanging out of my body was equally as painful. As I became more awake, actually during the day after surgery, wait for it, all I wanted to do was smoke. My body and me, we were just desperate for nicotine. Unfortunately, I wasn't well enough to get out of my bed, let alone leave the ward. So there was no chance of me and my friend Nicotine having a lovely little moment together. Well, you might be wondering if after all that surgery, pain and being very ill, did it put me off smoking? No, it didn't. Even after receiving lung surgery to reinflate the lung and my consultant thoracic surgeon telling me, quote, "You have to give up smoking, Ashley, as what with having asthma, your lungs just can't cope anymore." Still, I wanted to smoke. I laid in my hospital bed and I wanted to smoke. I just wanted to have a smoke. So, after being very ill and at one point even needing high dependency care, I was actually finally well enough to be discharged from hospital. And on the journey home, I actually felt quite powerful and I felt strong, and I thought, I hadn't smoked in quite a while. I thought, well, I've done it. Yay, I've quit. Being in hospital had helped me stop smoking. I think I tried. I know I tried to convince myself that I was over wanting to smoke. But sadly, that just wasn't the case in the long term. I don't think I'd realised the ideal of stopping smoking. But once home, it wouldn't take long for my old friend smoking to find me again. Well, after my surgery and my subsequent poor health, I had to stay close to home for a while because, I needed to recuperate, but I could take short walks. We had a little shop. Oh yeah, we had a little shop. Maybe a few minutes walk from where I lived. So I decided to go there with the sole intention of buying some sweets or a magazine. I left with the sweets and a magazine, but also a packet of 10 cigarettes. I know, stupid. Well, I lit up a cigarette, I looked at it, and then I just basked in the feeling it gave me as I smoked it. I felt so lightheaded, sick and dizzy, but my brain spun with the happy, wonderful assault I'd just given it, and how it thanked me for that hit of nicotine. That nasty little addictive drug that just so happened to be my best friend. Every nerve and every part of my body felt amazing again, and it was in that moment, me and my old friend, guess what? We were reunited again. I should have immediately stamped out the cigarette, but I didn't. I desperately tried not to inhale the cigarette too deeply, as I was actually concerned my lung would rupture. Obviously not that concerned, otherwise I wouldn't have bought the cigarettes. Stupid, but yes, I still did it. Funny how that euphoric, powerful feeling when I left the hospital had ebbed away, had gone. This is when I should say, and you might possibly be expecting me to say, that I felt disappointed with myself. I wasn't. All I wanted from that point on was more nicotine. So I went home and I thought, well, that's it. That's it. It was good while it lasted, but in the long term, I just wasn't able to stop smoking. It hadn't taken a lot to start again. Just one short walk to the shop, just one short walk. And I'm being quite serious, I tried to take comfort in the fact that I'd at least tried. But well, deep down I knew I could have tried harder. I didn't know what it would take for me to stop. My question to that, well, it soon had an answer. My then 5-year-old daughter came home from school. I started to prepare dinner. Nothing out of the ordinary, is it, preparing dinner? My daughter called me to her bedroom. She turned to me and she said, "Oh, you're doing so well at not smoking, Mummy. Please don't smoke again, as I don't want you to die." Oh. A hammer, a knife and everything else imaginable had just ripped through me. Her words made me think, what the hell am I doing to myself? I'm never going to see her grow up. It's bad enough all my other health problems, let alone doing that. But anyway, I decided I decided I'd never smoke again. Never. That's what it'd take for me to stop. Well, that time. So I managed to stop smoking with the fantastic support of my husband, who'd also given up in support of me. Even my little girl should tell me I was doing great. Somehow, and with my own sheer determination, I did it. The days turned into weeks, months and years. Years. Sometimes I'd remind myself of the pain as that needle, that medical tap went straight into my lungs just for good measure, especially if I was having a bad day. I always knew that nicotine was just a breath away. Just a breath. It was like, it was always going to be there. Well, for over 20 years, 20 years, possibly even longer, I didn't smoke. I didn't smoke. Not one form of tobacco ever passed my lips. So, what went wrong? What went wrong that led me to reverting back to my old friend nicotine for comfort? Basically, and in a nutshell, I became very ill. Mentally, very mentally ill. And my physical health also deteriorated. I went really downhill. You know, if you was to ask me when, where, how, or even why I started smoking, I couldn't tell you. Just somehow, there I was, back with my old friend Nicotine. After all those years, and I mean years, I was a smoker again, and that was that. Well, I smoked for about 4 years or thereabouts. In that time, my asthma, my Crohn's disease, my angina, and my overall health wasn't great. But still, I smoked. I tried several times to stop, but I always started smoking again. Sorry, I'm not used to reading glasses. Not looking down, I'm normally looking up. Looking back, I think the reality of my poor mental health was a contributing factor. That's what I was told. It really didn't help matters. Now, I'm not saying that as an excuse, but I've been told there were times that I didn't even know where I was, what I was doing, and sometimes I was even unable to properly take care of myself. In the days that I might have been doing better, well, I couldn't go and buy tobacco for myself, then somebody would buy it for me. I had to have it. I even managed to smoke in such a state of poor health. That's a question in itself, but I still managed to smoke. I had a very long recovery back from my mental health breakdowns, and I still struggle to this day, as I do with my physical health. But my daughter persisted in getting me treatment, and by that I mean the right treatment and medication for my mental health. I still struggle with my mental health. I'd say, you know, to this day or the next day, and I never quite, you know, can be too sure of how I am. I've even done a video on suicidal depression, you know, quite a while back. Feel free to check it out. I want to say that the decline of a person's mental health can be devastating. It's a devastating disease. It's awful. It totally altered my pathways in life and options available to me in life. I'd say that getting help for my mental health when I needed it the most over many years has certainly gone a long way. So I struggle with this bit because, you know, so much happened. Getting help really helped me and supported me in stopping smoking, because I did get there. So I'd say on this time on my journey of not smoking, I felt that, you know, this time I was adamant that I wasn't going to smoke anymore. But I knew I had to go about it properly, and even differently this time. You know, I decided to make an appointment with my doctor. I wanted to see what my options were. There were lots of choices, you know, from tablets to support groups, but I felt, you know, none of it was really right for me. We ended up, we agreed on a, you know, like a stop smoking cessation program, or is it cessation? Don't know how to say the word, sorry. Along with a nicotine spray. My daughter also suggested the idea of an A4 sheet of paper with days of the week on it, and I suppose, you know, when I look back now, it was like a bit of a tick box. You know, we called it, you know, this silly little name, I'll tell you in a minute. Anyway, so, you know, I attended these stop smoking sessions, and, you know, I'd say doing that, I always had, you know, this strong sense of achievement when, after I'd breathed, you know, what's it I've got here, yeah, into a little machine she had, it registered 0 for carbon monoxide. You know, apparently, you know, that's basically a poisonous gas found in cigarette smoke, hence in your body. Just as a side note, I will talk more about the process of how I stopped more in part 2 of giving up smoking. You know, I'm dealing with it here, but there is more in part 2. But, you know, trying to put it all in one lump was too much. So anyway, yeah, well, I continued at the stop smoking sessions, that's it, this therapy, with the one-on-one I opted for. I used the nicotine replacement spray, my tick box sheet, and this is when I meant to mention a minute ago, and I am now, it was called Giving Up the Fags. The Fags. Silly, but it made us laugh. And I also relied on the support of my daughter and husband, and I didn't smoke. Now, I can't begin to tell you how hard it was. There were days my body, let me tell you, screamed out for nicotine, but I refused. I said, brain, no. Body, no. My body, everything just craved it. But I just thought, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not smoking. I thought, I've had enough. I thought, I'm done. I began breaking habits that were once part of my daily life, and I think that I found quite important. I don't think I'd ever really lost those habits, even when I'd stopped smoking years ago. It was like retraining myself, you know, retraining my brain, everything, that I didn't need to smoke when I got up, or after I'd eaten something, or, you know, a cup of coffee, all the habits that you normally do. You have to break those little routines, and being autistic, that's quite hard to do, but I did it. I felt I had a completely different approach this time. Above all else, I think there's something you've got to say to yourself. You either want it or you don't. If you want it bad enough, then hopefully you'll succeed. I don't think I'd ever really wanted to give up before, if I'm being totally honest. It was always, you know, like I had to give up. I'd never had the option of wanting to give up. Before, I felt it was like forced on me. And I think if, you know, if your heart's not in it, your mind's not in it, isn't everything so much harder to do if you don't want to do it? So, you know, for me, how are we doing? Yeah, we're nearly there. We're on the last page, guys. I think there are some friends you just have to live without. So I'm going to live without nicotine, and I'm glad I don't smoke. Well, my journey, as I say, well, it stopped. Yeah, I've repeated myself a bit here. We do miss each other at times in our days, and I remember my friend called smoking, but I have the relief that I don't do it anymore. I'm glad, and I'm really glad that I don't smoke, but I know that smoking, it's only a breath away. It's just I choose not to take that breath anymore. So, closing notes, and we're done. Well, I hope you enjoyed my story and my personal journey about smoking. Please take a look at part 2, as there I do go into more details about the methods and routes I use to stop smoking. Thank you so much for watching, and you know, I hope by sharing this, you know, this very personal journey, that it goes some way to helping you, and that's what I want. If I can help someone, if I can help one person stop smoking, that's great. Well, hopefully I'll see you in part 2. As I say, I will talk more about, you know, how I actually went more into the physical way of stopping smoking. Other than that, do look after yourselves. Take care. Thanks for watching. Okay, bye.